This is video 2 for Wednesday, April 22nd, the silver issue in the populist movement. In the period after the Civil War, production on all fronts in industrial and agricultural increased. Greater supply accordingly led to a drop in prices. For many farmers, lower prices meant trouble as they were locked into long-term debts with fixed payments. Looking for a solution to their problem, farmers came to a support a more generous money supply. An increase in available money, they correctly figured, would make payments easier. It would also cause inflation, which would make the farmers' debts held by the northern banks worth less. Not surprisingly, the banks opposed the plan, preferring for the country to use only gold to back its money supply. The farmers' plan called for the liberal use of silver coins, and because silver was mined in the West, this plan had the added support of Western miners along with that of the Midwestern and Southern farmers. Thus, the issue of a regional component. Because it pitted poor farmers against wealthy bankers, it also had elements of class strife. Although a complicated matter, the money issue was potentially explosive. The silver versus gold debate provided an issue around which farmers could organize. They did just that. First came the Grange movement, which, founded in 1867, boasted more than a million members by 1875. The Grangers started out as cooperatives with the purpose of allowing farmers to buy machinery and sell crops as a group, and therefore reap the benefits of economies of scale. Soon the Grangers endorsed political candidates and lobbied for legislation. The Grangers ultimately died out due to lack of money, but they were replaced by farmers' alliances. The farmers' alliances were even more successful than the Grange movement, and they soon grew into a political party called the People's Party, the political arm of the populist movement, or the Populist Party. The People's Party held a convention in 1892. The platform drew up. It presented many of the ideas that would later be championed by the progressives. Aside from supporting the generous coinage of silver, the populists called for government ownership of railroads and telegraphs, a graduated income tax, direct election of U.S. senators, and shorter work days. Although their 1892 presidential candidate James Weaver came in third, he won more than 1 million votes, awakening Washington to the growing populist movement. As Cleveland took office in 1893, the country entered in a 4-year financial crisis, the Panic of 1893. Hard economic times made populist goals more popular, particularly the call for easy money. Most people at the time, after all, had no money at all. Times got so bad that even more progressive, some would say radical movements gained popularity. In 1894, the socialists, led by Eugene Debs, gained support, or socialism. By 1896, the populists were poised for power. They backed Democratic candidate William James Bryan against Republican nominee William McKinley, and Bryan ran on a strictly populist platform. He based his campaign on a call for free silver. He is probably best remembered for his Cross the Gold speech, typically a multiple-choice question. He argued that an easy money supply, though inflationary, would loosen the control that northern banking interests held over the country. He lost the campaign. This, coupled with the improved economy, ended the populist movement in the 1890s. But like the text talks about, it helps lead into the progressive policies of the 1900s. All right, foreign policy. Tariff and imperialism. Before the Civil War, most Americans earned their living by farming. By 1900, however, the United States had become the leading industrial power in the world. It's difficult for us to imagine the enormous controversies surrounding the issue of the tariff throughout U.S. history. Remember that there were no federal income tax until the 16th Amendment in 1913. Clearly, the most infamous tariff was the Tariff of Abominations in 1828. This ultimately triggered the nullification crisis during Jackson's first administration. Following the Civil War, the tariff came to dominate national politics as industrialists competing in an international market demanded high tariffs to protect domestic industries. Farmers and laborers, on the other hand, were hurt by high tariffs. Generally, Democrats who supported lower tariffs, while Republicans advocated high protective tariffs. In 1890, Congress enacted the McKinley Tariff, which raised the level of duties on imposed goods almost 50%. Certain products, however, such as unprocessed sugar, were put on a duty-free list. Then in 1894, Congress passed the Wilson-Gorman Tariff, which essentially resembled the schedule established by the McKinley Tariff, despite heated debate between members of the House of Representatives and the Senate. The tariff issue was not only dominated congressional debate, but it also had a tremendous impact on foreign relations. For example, the Wilson-Gorman Tariff is usually considered one of the causes of the Spanish-American War. Throughout the machine age, American production capacity grew rapidly. As we have already discussed, not every American had enough money to buy products he or she made at work. America began looking overseas to find new markets. Increased nationalism also led American business to look for new markets. America's centennial celebration in 1876 heightened national pride, as did awareness that the country was becoming a world economic power. As Americans became more certain that their way of life was best, they hoped to spread that around the globe. This philosophy led American influence to expand into a number of new arenas. First, William Henry Seward, Secretary of State under Lincoln and Johnson, set the precedent for increased American participation in any and all doings in the Western Hemisphere. In particular, Seward engineered the purchase of Alaska and invoked the Monroe Doctrine to force France out of Mexico. In the following decade, American business began developing markets and production facilities in Latin America, and gradually they gained political power in the region. As long as America moved into regions to do business, it was practicing expansionism, which most Americans supported. When the United States took control of another country, however, it was exercising imperialism, a more controversial practice. A book by naval captain Alfred T. Mahan, called The Influence of Sea Power Upon History, picked the government's interest in imperialism. Mahan argued that successful foreign trade relied on access to foreign ports, which in return required overseas colonies, and colonies in turn required a strong navy. The book popularized the idea of the new navy, and after the United States invested in upgrading its ships, it turned its attention to foreign acquisitions. The search for a port along the trade route to Asia attracted the United States to Hawaii. Foreign missionaries had arrived in Hawaii in the early 1800s, but significant U.S. involvement there began in the 1870s when American sugar producers started trading with the Hawaiians. Due in part to American interference, the Hawaiian economy collapsed in the 1890s. The United States had allowed Hawaii tariff-free access to American markets. Then when Hawaii became dependent on the trade with the United States, the government imposed high tariffs, the McKinley tariff mentioned above, thereby greatly diminishing Hawaiian exports. The white minority overthrew the native government, and eventually the United States annexed Hawaii. Japan was outraged. More than 40% of the Hawaii's residents were of Japanese descent. That anger would resurface during the World War II. Another opportunity for American expansion rose when Cuba natives revolted against Spanish control. The revolution in Cuba, like the Hawaiian Revolution, was instigated by U.S. tampering with the Cuban economy by imposing high import tariffs, as discussed above. A violent Cuban Civil War followed, reported in all of its gory detail in the sensational Hearst newspaper, yellow journalism paper. When an American warship, the Maine, exploded in Havana Harbor under circumstances that remain a mystery, the drumbeats of a war grew deafening. In the ensuing war, the United States not only drove Spain out of Cuba, but also sent a fleet to the Spanish-controlled Philippines and drove the Spanish out of it too. In the Treaty of Paris, Spain granted Cuba independence and ceded the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Guam to the United States. Remember that Hawaii was annexed the same year, but not because of the Spanish-American War. Also note this was the third Treaty of Paris that matters in U.S. history. The first ended the French and Indian War in 1763. The second ended the Revolutionary War in 1783. So we're going to stop that there. We're going to look at the key concepts real quick. Looking at Unit 6 in the course guidebook, Westward Expansion, 6.2, Westward Expansion, Economic Development. Improvements in mechanization helped agricultural production increase substantially and contributed to declines in food prices. Many farmers responded to the increasing consolidation in agricultural markets and their dependence on an evolving railroad system by creating local and regional cooperative organizations. Following the Civil War, government subsidies for transportation and communication systems helped open new markets in North America. The building of transcontinental railroads, the discovery of mineral resources, and government policies promoted economic growth and created new communities and centers of commercial activity. 6.3 Westward Expansion, Social and Cultural Development. In hopes of achieving ideals of self-sufficiency and independence, migrants moved to both rural and boomtown areas of the West for opportunities such as building railroads, mining, farming, and ranching. As migrant populations increased in number and the American bison population was decimated, competition for land and resources in the West among white settlers and American Indians and Mexican Americans led to an increase in violent conflict. The U.S. government violated treaties with American Indians and responded to resistance with military force, eventually confining American Indians to reservations and denying tribal sovereignty. Many Native Americans preserved their cultures and tribal identities despite government policies promoting assimilation, and they attempted to develop self-sustaining economic practices. All right, the New South. 6.5 Technological Innovation. Businesses made use of technological innovations and greater access to natural resources to dramatically increase production of goods. The rise of industrial capitalism. Large-scale industrial production accompanied by massive technological change, expanding international communication networks. Pro-growth government policies generated rapid economic development and business consolidation. Businesses made use of redesigned financial and management structures, advances in marketing, and a growing labor force to dramatically increase the production of goods. Many business leaders sought increased profits by consolidating corporations into large trusts and holding companies, which further concentrated wealth. Businesses increasingly looked outside the U.S. borders in an effort to gain greater influence and control over markets and natural resources in the Pacific Rim, Asia, and Latin America. Labor in the Gilded Age. As the price of many goods decreased, workers' real wages increased, providing new access to a variety of goods and services. Many Americans' standard of living improved, while the gap between rich and poor grew. Labor and management battled over wages and working conditions, with workers organizing local and national unions and or directly confronting business leaders. The industrial workforce expanded and child labor increased. All right, we're not to immigration and Gilded Age yet. And probably it for now. Okay.